everyone, it's Alice, and today we're gonna do a little end of the year TBR. I feel like November just arrived out of nowhere, and that means that there's not actually that much left of the year. I feel like my reading this year has been not the best compared to previous years. Like, I haven't read as much, but when I'm thinking about it, I have read a lot of books that I've liked. I've read a lot of good books. And I guess that's all that really matters. Because my reading is a little bit on the slow side right now though, I started thinking about what books I actually want to get to before the year ends, and so I've made a little TBR. The goal is to get to all of these, but knowing myself, I might get distracted by some other books, but hopefully I will get to most of these before 2023 rolls around. I'm gonna cheat a little bit with the first one because I'm actually currently reading this one, but when I made this list, I hadn't started it, so I feel like we can include it. It's Babel by R.F. Kuang. This is historical fiction urban fantasy, and it starts off in 1828, where we meet our main character who has been orphaned in China, and this mysterious professor comes and gets him and brings him over to London and sort of puts him into these studies, and he starts studying translations and language, and he ends up at this like prestigious university in Oxford where they study translation, and specifically translation for use in this particular magic. That in and of itself doesn't seem bad, but of course there's darkness lurking, and there's a secret society that wants to bring down this entire institute of translation because of what it's being used for. I'm enjoying this a lot. Probably more than I thought I was going to, actually. I don't know what I had expected, but I've seen a lot of this book around, and I've seen a lot of sort of mixed reviews. I've seen a lot of people be a little bit disappointed by it, but so far I'm really enjoying it. I can see that it's a little bit convenient in parts, and it's the kind of book that does maybe a little bit over-explain to you what it's trying to say, but so far I'm not bothered by it at all, and I'm just really enjoying it. I like the writing, I love the setting, I love the time period. We meet all of these like different kinds of characters, and I love the secret society and the vibe and all of that, so far I'm enjoying this a lot. I'm also actually enjoying the fact that it's a bigger book. I have a tendency to like ignore bigger books because they take longer to get through, obviously, and especially because my reading has been the way it's been this year and I haven't read as many books as usual. I've sort of gravitated towards shorter books, but I did just really want to read this, and so I started it, and I'm happy that it's like I've got another 400 pages to go, and I usually don't feel that way. The second book I've got, I'm definitely going to read soon. It's The Bullet That Missed by Richard Osman, which is the third book in the Thursday Murder Club series, where we follow a group of pensioners who love being amateur sleuths. I have talked a lot about this series on my channel, so I'm sure you know that this is one of my favorite cozy mystery series, and obviously I'm very excited to read this. The mystery in here seems to be about two murders that happened 10 years apart, but there's something that links them, and there is a character in this friend group of pensioners who's had a wild life, if you will, and she's had a very interesting career, and there's like stuff that keeps popping up from that life that comes back to like haunt her, and I think there's something like a nemesis, which she appears to have a lot of. Like, one of her many nemesis is that how you say that? Whatever. One of her many enemies come back into her life, and I think they want her to do something. I don't know, but they get involved in murders, as always. I'm just really looking forward to cozying up with this. I feel like the series is the perfect blend of like mystery, comedy, and great characters, and it's just a good time. Then I've got a book that just feels very appropriate to read when it's getting colder and darker. It's Nordic Tales, which is a collection of 16 folk tales and fairy tales from the Nordic countries. So Norway, Sweden, Denmark, Iceland, and Finland. I grew up with a lot of fairy tales, mostly Norwegian ones, and then some like Grimm brothers ones, and then there were some from the surrounding countries that just sort of trickled in here. And so I'm interested to see how many of these I'm familiar with. Looking at the list of stories, I don't recognize a lot of them, but it might just be that the title is something that I don't recognize, and when I've read it, I'll know what it is. I'm also very intrigued to see how the translation of this is, because this is a book in English, and I've only been exposed to these stories in Norwegian. And I wonder what, like, there are some cultural things in these books that I wonder how they're gonna do that in translation and how that's gonna translate, because they may have chosen stories that were easier to translate, but when thinking about fairy tales that I grew up with, some of them, I don't know how you would translate them. I do think this is just gonna be a treat though, and it is also illustrated, which I really, really like. I like this kind of illustration style. It seems to have like one illustration per story. I wish maybe there were a little bit more, but that's okay. I actually really like this one with the little fox. I just think this is gonna be a treat. Next, we have got another wintry book. It's The Winter of the Witch by Catherine Arden. This is the third and final book in the Winter Night trilogy. The first book is called The Bear and the Nightingale, and I've been reading this trilogy for like a couple of years. I've read one book for each winter for the past like 2 years, I think. I may have skipped last winter, I don't remember, but these books are perfect to read when it's like cold and dark outside. They're set in historical Russia, in a world where there's like magic and darkness looming, and it's just amazing. I'm very excited to see how the series is going to conclude. I love so many things about this book. I love the characters, and I've loved following our main character throughout these books. I love the atmosphere and the setting. I love all of the magic stuff, and I just think it's a great story. I think this might be one of my favorite like series of this kind that I've read, and there is a part of me that like I don't want to read this because it means the series has finished, but I also want to read it because if it's like the other books, it's gonna be amazing. Then we've got some more historical fiction. We've got The Marriage Portrait by Maggie O'Farrell, and I just want to read this because I want to read more Maggie O'Farrell. She's one of those authors that I like. They're the kinds of books that I will like leave for when I know that I just need a really good book. Like I trust her to write a really good book, especially historical fiction, and I seem to be very much in the mood for historical fiction these days. The story in here is set in Florence in the 1550s, and we meet the third daughter of this Grand Duke who really loves her life. She's sort of flying under the radar, and she loves doing art, and she's happy. But then her eldest sister dies right before she's supposed to marry this really powerful man. And I guess her father just decides that she can marry him instead. And so she has to, and she's thrust into this completely unknown world. She's really young, she's barely out of like girlhood, and she has to navigate court. She's not necessarily welcomed by everyone, and then her husband seems to be a very mysterious figure. There's something about the way O'Farrell writes that I just love, and there's something about it that I think fits historical fiction really well. Like I read Hamnet by her, which is one of my favorite books that I've ever read, and there was something about the way she writes that just made it so much better, like all of the historical stuff, but also just all of it. And so I just think this is gonna be fantastic. I also love the setting of Italy, especially Florence. Florence is one of my favorite places that I've ever visited, and just thinking about it gives me this like particular feeling. And so I think reading a book set in that, oh, I just think it's gonna be amazing. I also, of course, absolutely love this cover. I guess it's not very like wintry and maybe it feels more summery to me, but I don't think I can help myself. I don't think I can wait until summer, so I'm just gonna have to read it very soon. Second to last, we have got a translated book because I want to squeeze another one in before the year ends. It's The Honjin Murders by Saishi Yokomizo, and this is one of Japan's greatest classic murder mysteries, which you know I want to read. It's set in this village during winter, which again is great. I think it's set in the year like 1937 or something, and in this little village, everyone is really excited because the son of this grand family is getting married. But there is also some worrying rumors going around about this person lurking about with like a mask, and that's not great. Then on the night of the wedding, everyone is awoken by this terrible scream, and when they run towards it to figure out what has happened, all they find is this bloody sword thrust into the snow. And both the detective in this book and me want to find out what happened. That's not a lot to go on, so I'm very curious as to how they're gonna figure that out. Lastly, we have got this, which is called Disappearing Earth by Julia Phillips. This is also a murder mystery, and it's more contemporary. It's set in Siberia somewhere, and in this like little village, and two young girls go missing. I think they're abducted, and no one can find out anything about it, which like rocks this little community. I love a good small town mystery, and obviously this setting makes me feel very wintry, so I thought this could be a good time to read it. It appears to me to be the kind of mystery that's like a little bit on the slower side, and it explores like characters and culture. It doesn't seem very like action-packed, which I'm kind of into. And there's something about the setting that just makes me think it's gonna be great, and the atmosphere is just gonna be fantastic. Alright, those were all the books that I had on my list though. I've kept myself from adding any more to this pile because I think based on how much I've read this year and like my current reading speed, this is an actual realistic number of books that I should be able to get to. I might end up switching some of these out for other things if I get distracted or I find a new exciting book, which happens to me quite often. But I think that this is doable. Now, I'd love to know if any of you have any books that you would love to get to before the end of the year and what those books are. Or if you've read any of the books that I mentioned, I'd love to hear what you thought of them. As always, thank you very much for hanging out with me today, and I will see you soon. Bye!